afternoon, everyone. I'll bring our meeting to order. This is the regular meeting for May 22nd of the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund Board. Welcome. We will start briefly with introductions around the room. Starting to my left, starting to my right, your left. We will start at the end, work our way around, and go around the room.
Jason Lehman, Fire Trustee.
Catherine McLeod, Citizen Trustee.
Jennifer Cooperman.
Elizabeth Fouts, Citizen Trustee.
Brian Hunsaker, Trustee.
Lauren Donkar, outside legal counsel.
Henry Gripper, retired Board of Police.
Frank Del Carlo, liaison from Fire.
Kimberly Mitchell, Fpdr.
Olivia Wattman, Public Safety Labor Group.
Stacy Jones, Fpdr.
Frank Lopation, City Attorney's Office.
Kathy Kakisako, Fpdr.
Sam Hutchison, Fpdr Director.
Great, welcome everyone. Do we have a public comment sign up? No.
Minutes?
Yes, that's next.
Okay.
So before we go ahead, we were distributed the minutes from the prior meeting of March 20th. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none.
None.
I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes.
Anyone second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor say aye.
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 So hearing no opposed, the minutes are approved. So we have our first action item is a discussion of resolution number 522, tax anticipation notes.
Hello.
Ms. Jones.
Stacy Jones, Fpdr Finance Manager. I'm back again, over and over. Actually, before we talk about TANs, I wanted to give you all a brief budget update, because when you approved the budget in January, you asked me to let you know if there were any significant changes that came about as a result of council's decisions for other bureaus, which sometimes impact us. And we did have a significant change. Council approved the budget, sitting as the budget committee. Last week, they still have to adopt the budget as the governing body, as council, which they'll do in a couple of weeks, but there shouldn't be any significant changes between now and then. But they did add 49 new police officer positions and 1 new firefighter position, so that's 50 new sworn positions. So we added $307,000 to our budget for the PERS contributions, because of course they'll all be Fpdr 3 members, those new hires. And that is, taking account of the fact that we won't need to pay PERS contributions in the first 6 months. You don't pay PERS contributions in the first 6 months of any new hire, and that they won't all start on July 1, either they'll be hired throughout the year. The full year cost of that many positions, once they've all reached top step, but at current PERS rates, would be like $1.125 million, but we're just budgeting the $307,000, which should get us through next year. But so that is a significant addition in cost for us as we go forward. We offset $138,000 of that new expense with a reduction in general fund overhead. I think I mentioned in January that when they ran that model, they grabbed the wrong metrics for Fpdr and they fixed those in the proposed. So we wound up being about $172,000 over what you guys approved in January. And there are always other very, very minor changes, like literally of the add $50 to the printing and distribution budget because they've decided they're gonna, do some new process over there. But but that's the significant change. And I just wanted to update everyone on that. Are there any questions about that? You probably all knew about it, read about it in the paper, but that's the impact for us. So what you have before you today is the resolution asking you to approve the issuance, not the purchase, but the issuance of tax anticipation notes, or TANs, as we sometimes call them. And TANs are the short-term bonds that we issue every year. They're backed by our anticipated property tax receipts that will start rolling in mid-November. And this is just the way we manage our cash flow problem between the start of the fiscal year on July 1 and how we get to mid-November when we start getting property tax receipts. So we do this every year. We always ask the board, and then council, the last council next week, they need to authorize the issuance as well, to issue the full budgeted amount, which is $57.7 million this year. We want to be conservative and have the full authority to issue as much as we need, but we almost never need the fully budgeted amount. And our best guess right now is that we're going to need about 36.2 million, which is oddly exactly what we issued last year. Last year we issued 36.2 million. And it should be more because every month our costs go up as we add retirees and not very many folks die, and as we add new hires, and indeed our costs are going up every month. But we have a much healthier beginning fund balance this fiscal year than we did last year. We think we're going to wind up at about 21 million in fund balance on July 1, 2018, and last year we only had 14 million. So that's why we're able to issue at the same amount. We just have more fund balance on hand. So the 36.2 is what we're thinking right now. It could certainly swing by as much as a couple of $1 million between now and when we finalize that amount, which will be in about a month. We do this really highly detailed cash flow analysis that's literally every penny going out and every penny coming in between now and mid-November, so that we feel like we have the best handle we can on what our low point will be. Throw in an extra $1 million just to be safe, and so we'll finalize that number. And probably in mid-June, we will go to Moody's to get a rating towards the end of June, so we can have our rating by early July. And we have consistently received the highest rating from Moody's in the past. And right now, Eric Johansson and I are planning, Eric is the city's debt manager, are planning to go out to the market on July 11th to issue. So those are kind of the facts on the TAN issue. I do also want to remind everyone that we do have that reserve fund. We've talked about that a little bit. $750,000, so it's not going to cover much, but it is there. And every year we budget to transfer that money to the operating fund if we need to, so that's kind of the double secret. If cash flow really goes awry, we can pull that $750,000 over into the operating fund. So that is there. And then the last thing to kind of talk about is the interest rate spread, which we have talked about several times over the last year. So what I'm talking about is the difference between the interest rate we have to pay on the TANs and the interest rate we earn when the proceeds are invested in the city treasury pool, which historically has always been positive for us, like between 1/3 and 0.5%. So issuing TANs, we need to do it for cash flow, but it also makes financial sense. We make a little bit of money on the deal. There was a lot of talk last year about whether or not that would continue because city treasuries had to lower their earnings expectations in response to council's decision not to invest in corporate bonds anymore. So I've been keeping a closer eye on, I've been keeping like a monthly eye on that. This year, the interest rate we're carrying on our TANs is 0.91%, and the average to date that we've been earning in the city treasury pool is 1.33. And I think we'll end the year a little higher because interest rates have been ticking up as we go along. So we still, this year, have had a good spread. I mean, that's 0.4%. And I think we'll wind up a little bit higher in the end because I think the average across the whole fiscal year in the city treasury pool will be a little bit higher. Jennifer, or Chair Cooperman would know more about that than I, but I think that's what we'll probably see. So we're still looking good for this year. For next year, although I feel like a broken record because I said this last year, but for next year, it might not happen. For next year, the city treasury, their projection is 1.8% for earnings on the investment. I mean, rates are going up. But Eric is thinking that in mid-July, when we're issuing, that we will probably be in the 1.8 to 2% on what we have to, on what will be charged on our TANs and interest rates, which will be a big increase over this year. So without getting too much into the mechanics of, when different markets move in response to raising interest rates, and I don't know to what degree we'll be caught up in that in the mid-July moment, we might be just breaking even next year. We might be on the losing end. We might be on the positive end as we've been, but I just want you to know that we're tracking it really carefully. Keep updating you on where we are with that. We need to make a little bit of money to at least make up just for the debt issuance costs, which are about 25 to 30 grand a year, so that we're at least breaking even in that sense. And then, the whole reason we do this is for cash flow. What are the alternatives to manage cash flow? But for now, this continues to work well for us, but we'll keep an eye on it. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Are you looking for an action?
Oh, yes. First, I think we may need to amend the resolution before you. I believe it says that you are authorizing us to purchase tax anticipation notes, and we're actually asking an underwriter to purchase our tax anticipation notes. We are issuing them, so it would be great if someone could make a motion to amend the resolution to replace that word.
That's in the third paragraph.
The third whereas.
The
Yeah.
third whereas in there, you'll see, it says the Board of Trustees is empowered to purchase bonds. Requesting an amendment to change that to the Board of Trustees is empowered to issue bonds. Just a one-word change.
Yes.
Make a
Thank you.
motion to make that change to paragraph 3, changing that the board is empowered to purchase bonds to that the board is empowered to issue bonds.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the resolution has been amended.
Great.
So now we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution as amended. Do I have that?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 522 with the change that we just made.
Great. Seconded?
Second?
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. You
Thank
now have
you.
the authority to bring this to council.
Thank you. Which we plan to do next week.
Great.
You're next.
Okay, the next items on the agenda are all informational, and I believe they're with you.
Yeah, so you have the regular year-to-date expenditure report before you. Everything is proceeding as planned. We are tracking under, as we have been all year, in disability benefits. We have just had fewer folks on short-term disability this year than in the past, which is great news. And at this point in the year, I think we'll be under budget in that category, specifically in short-term time off work disability benefits. If you look closely, it looks like we're underspending in internal materials and services, which is mostly the money that we send to the police and fire bureaus for PERS contributions and a variety of other things. But that's actually a billing delay. We don't have we do have and have now paid fire's third quarter billings, but we didn't have them when the month closed out. But those are all on track, and in fact, they're going to be a little bit higher than anticipated because of the retroactive PERS payments on fire's retroactive payments. Capital.
Have those been made? Sorry, have those been made yet? Those retroactive PERS payments?
Yes, they have. Yep. So they came out as part of the payroll. If we really, but I can see them in the system. Yeah. So when fire was issued their retroactive payments for the Fpdr 3 members, the retroactive PERS payments came out at the same time, and went off to PERS, and then through whatever mechanism that is, I don't know how the city sends those, but I assume it's automated in some way, and then fire turns around and bills us for that amount.
And was that for, I don't know how they divide it up, but for the defined contribution and the defined benefit portion, so the IAP was credited also at the same time? Okay.
They're two different GL accounts, and so depending on your tier, most are in the OPSRP tier. There's a rate for that goes into the defined benefit portion of the plan, and then there's a second GL account that grabs the 9% of pay to go into the IAP, the defined contribution portion.
Thank you.
And that is really the only thing that I might point out to the board from the expenditure report, but are there any questions? Anything that looks odd to anyone?
I don't have a question about the budget. I have a question about relationships with other retirement boards that you might have. You mentioned that we're at a lower cost for short-term disability. And over the last, I think, 2 contracts or 3 contracts, several within the last 10 years, the city and the unions have negotiated proactive health, which I think has a positive effect to retirement and disability issues. My question is, do you have any contacts, or can you reach out to other retirement type people that would also have a similar characteristic in this, mainly for the knowledge that proactive health is actually reducing the cost on a disability board? Does that make sense to my question?
Normally, the disability isn't a retirement, it's basically workers' compensation. So what you're doing is asking us to compare with other workers' compensation carriers, not retirement plans.
On a proactive health status.
Yeah.
Because we become more proactive on our health status, I think.
And I think that's good. There are a lot of studies out there about how wellness and health programs benefit people, and frankly, they're very mixed. I mean, these are national studies that everybody lauds that, yes, they should be there, but are they really reducing the amount of sick time, reducing the amount of injury time, whether it's work-related or not work-related? Frankly, it's hard to measure. And I think a lot of the programs you have just recently put in place, we will be tracking disability going over, and we'll try to look at trends. And then you will attempt to, which it's difficult to say, why do we have fewer claims? Because they're healthier, and are they healthier because of these programs? We will be taking a look at that. Okay. But again, national studies on all sorts of wellness programs are very mixed on how much dollar for dollar that you put into the programs, the savings you get on it. And some companies and some municipalities see no reduction in sick leave use or missed time, whether it's work-related or not. So others see it pretty well. So we'll continue to monitor it. And the trick is how to say, if we see a reduction here, how can we tie it into the health program? You'd like to, but when you're trying to do the analysis, can you get to a one-to-one? This dollar was saved because you spent $1 in this program. We'll monitor that as we see, because with the new fire plan, you're going to get some additional type of more in-depth physicals and stuff going forward. You're trying to do some stuff to maybe prevent cancer. I know the Fire Bureau is looking at cancer. We're going to try to do a little bit of study on some cancers and some of our claims too, and we'll be trying to track to see if there's anything. But we'll monitor that. It's just studies have been really mixed on the value of those programs.
And the reason I asked that, or the reason I find that beneficial is, as we mentioned, we've increased the number of police officers and firefighters, and there's costing growing. But we also want to show the city, I think the city council would be very affected by the fact that because they've been proactive in their health issues, they're actually saving some money in a different area. So that's why I was curious.
Kim and I will talk about that, and we will discuss more of how we're evaluating to see if those programs are effective.
Thank you.
And I was going to say, so I think there's a couple different issues there. I think what Brian's saying is absolutely right, and I don't know how mixed those studies are. When you bring up things like sick leave, I can see that. That's a little different, and that doesn't have anything to do with our Fpdr anyway. So as far as people becoming healthier, going to the doctor, being proactive, catching things early, that I think is pretty much proven to be, that's the truth. I don't think there's a lot of mixed studies on that.
Well, there's a lot on wellness programs, a huge amount of study on wellness programs for all sectors, private sector, public, and non, of how effective are they for dollar companies are putting in for these wellness programs. Are they seeing that kind of reduction in the use of medical, are their medical premiums declining because of healthier people? Are sick leave usage and other disability programs usage dropping? Are workers' compensation costs dropping? So, if I put $1 million into a program over 5 years, am I going to see $1 million in return on that? That's a mixed bag on what's happening. Are people healthier? They probably are healthier. Or these programs, I think employers are committed to doing them. But again, how do you measure success? And employers, I put this number of dollars into this program, where does that come out on the other end? Do I have that much less overtime because people are less sick? Do I have less sick leave? Do I have less disability usage, less workers' comp usage? That's where they're not getting that big connection yet.
Yeah, but I think in this bureau, Fpdr, we should be just talking about disability claims, right?
We can do that.
Not sick leave or whatever happens on the other side. I mean, this is about.
Well, I'm just telling you what the studies are showing here right now, and we'll come into it. I think the biggest part for the difficulty for tracking on a wellness program is people see the doctor more often. Is that's translating maybe to a healthier person, but is it definitely translating to fewer claims? Why are we having fewer claims? Is it because more people are seeing a doctor, or is it just the way the stars are aligned this month and fewer people are getting injured, fewer people are falling off the fire truck? Fewer people are not hurting their back because they're not because maybe they're lifting better, or maybe they're just not having to lift as much as they've done. That's where it gets to be a challenge, is to say, why have certain claims decreased? Is it because of the wellness program you put it in, or is it a series of happenstance that just they have heavier people to lift?
Well, and that's where my original question was coming from. And retirement boards of our similar size. And the reason I ask that is, I think with education and wellness that we've been implementing through negotiations with the city, and the reason I want to do this, I want to show the city a benefit, is really what I'm trying to show them, is by working with the city and you know, person A going to the doctor with a preventative or preemptive health issue, they get face-to-face time. And the doctor says, listen, when you're at work, don't pick up a 150-pound body, right? Doctors do that. That's their job, right? And so then the guy or girl is like, okay, you know, I mean, so it's proactive health.
Yeah.
And I think that proactive health FaceTime with doctors is a benefit to this city. And that's what I was kind of getting to is I think it can show a positive benefit to the city that we're working, that their decisions are working well with FPDR.
Okay. What I'd like to do here is we can continue to cycle through this discussion.
Yeah,
Like Kim and I go back and to discuss this, and then for our next meeting, we will bring this up as one of our informational topics and explain to go through with that to see where we are. Again, plans are very good. The challenge is as to how do they relate to fewer injuries? How do they not? And
if you could maybe research that, I'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so Kim and I will at least discuss with you some ways that we can analyze it in more depth and go from there.
Sam, for purposes of that discussion, I would be interested in learning more about the volatility of that short-term disability number over time, and you know, how long of a time we could look at in order to get the board some meaningful data on the impact of these.
Yeah, we can certainly get you data probably as far back as you want on, you know, there are multiple components to disability. There's the short-term time loss, paying folks when they're missing work. Then there's the medical component, medical expenses. Both very volatile, medical more so because of the variation in procedure cost, depending on the type of injury. And then the monthly disability, which is more stable and probably not as interesting for this discussion because those are folks who are on long-term disability. I mean, the problem in any sort of data analysis like this is even if you hired the best, you know, program evaluator in the world with the fanciest statistics who could control for 8,000 variables, you know, and get you an R-squared of like 80%, you're still going to be, I mean, this is a hard thing to, I mean, I don't work much in that world, but it's very hard to.
It's difficult to prove a negative or the non-existence of something. So that is difficult, but it's still, I think, an exercise worth doing. And I do think the longer the period you look at, you can look at a trend and say, well, obviously the trend is headed this direction. There's some reason for it. You know, it seems to be bigger than just random occurrence if you're looking at a long enough period and a big enough sample. So you can just look at the trend and people can draw whatever inferences
their own
they
conclusions
want.
from it.
And we'll bring some of the data. Our population is not a large population, so we do get impacted. Like we've had a catastrophic disability claim a couple of years ago. Boy, that blew our costs way up. We've had a couple post-retirement medical because of the nature of their condition cost us $80,000 to $100,000, and that really skews some of your costs. So when we're looking at data, and we'll talk with Stacy how to present it, is there ways to isolate maybe some of these unique one-time occurrences? Because it's not, we do get about every 2 to 3 years $100,000 claim coming in versus some of the other ones which are really, you know, tens of thousands, but, you know, 100 to 200,000, and they can really.
But we can pull out large claims like we do for the actuarial valuation, and where we treat them separately and bring you guys some stuff. And of course, I'm sitting here laughing to myself, thinking about wellness programs on a retirement board, and thinking that on the retirement side, the healthier people are, the more it costs. Yes. I think, oh, yes, that's great that people are healthy, but then they live another 5 years.
When I'm 95, that'll be the last
And just to bring up a quick thing, as I mean, Brian, you keep bringing up the retirement programs. It is extremely rare for a retirement program to have a disability component. So some of them may have a disability retirement component, but our disability component is workers' comp. So when we talk about comparison, we compare to workers' compensation, not to the disability retirement section for other ones. So that's just a minor point, and that's who our audience is when we do comparisons as to workers' compensation.
So we'll look for you to bring something back to us at our next meeting. Thank you. Okay. So FPDR updates?
No real updates at this time. I think the next thing is item 3 for future meeting agenda. So July, we have no scheduled topics unless you want to make, I don't know if we would be ready to do a full discussion of what we talked about in July. And if so, that would be the only topics. I don't know if you want to do that. So what we will do is we will reach out to everybody toward the end of June to see if there's any other topics, and at that point, make a decision whether or not we'll have the July board meeting. We've canceled the last 2 July board meetings for lack of topics. September is the state of Fpdr, and we can make this discussion a subset of that discussion. So this gives a background of what's happened in Fpdr over the year, both claim trends and in retirement trends for that time. We will be bringing some administrative rules to you. These, for the most part, are cleanup and updates and clarifications. None of them are substantive changes. One of the things that's driving that is both police and fire are using more people on transitional duty, which is a program to where the firefighter, police officer can return to in a limited duty position. They're paid out of the police and fire budgets, but we would then reimburse the police or fire bureau for 75%, which is the equivalent that we would be paying if they were at home watching TV. So we're paying the same amount, but it's a program that encourages the bureaus to get people back together. The rules written for that were written 15, 20 years ago. So we just need to tweak them to clarify exactly what the program is, so it's really clear to everybody. And again, it's more of it's a clarification. It's not a change to the program. And there's a few other little things that we'll do, just cleaning up some wording. So what we do for the rules is typically it's a 3-step process. I hold a public Q&A session to where we invite people over to the Fpdr offices, the public, and they will have a draft of the rules. We'll issue that beforehand, and they can just talk over what they see. We'll answer questions. So it's just a free flow back and forth discussion of the rules. Then after that, Fpdr evaluates the rules again and takes into any of the comments that were given, can edit them further, and then they come up with what we call a final draft to present to the board. That is posted 30 days before the board meeting, so that will be posted around August 24th, and then on the board meeting on September 25th is when you'll have a chance to review them and vote on them.
When will the public comment period be?
Roughly about mid-August.
Okay.
I hold it usually about 2 to 3 weeks before the posting, which will be at the end of August.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all we have.
We have covered all of the agenda items, so I think we are on schedule for the shortest FPDNR board meeting that at least I've attended. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. That was awesome.